Good evening. There is heavy flood in Delhi. Yes or no? Chalo. So, yesterday we are discussing about economics and history. Vidwan ban gaya ho. So today we'll be discussing about the relationship between sociology and history. ठीक है? आज दो पढ़ा देंगे तुमको, sociology and history, and second sociology and philosophy. We'll be starting with sociology and history. In last 5 years, 2 times question came on the relationship between history and sociology. ठीक है? एक तो क्वेश्चन आया था, sociology without history is rootless and history without sociology is fruitless. ठीक है? So how history and sociology cannot exist without each other? How both the disciplines are sharing a strong relationship. Like what we have done yesterday. Today also we'll be discussing about how history originated, how sociology originated, and how both the disciplines are standing different from each other. Then we'll be discussing about on which point history and sociology are meeting each other. Then finally, we'll be discussing about contemporary interface between history and sociology. Okay? So first we'll be looking into how history originated. I would be saying that history is as old as human civilization itself. Okay? So history is as old as human civilization itself. So when human civilization started, people were using tools, technologies, practicing different kinds of rituals. So these tools and technology used by the people belonging to one generation was switched over to the people belonging to next generation. Cultural practices also were transmitted from one generation to next generation. On the basis of that, people created a kind of materialistic history, cultural history. Okay? And collecting evidence on these material artifacts, collecting materials on the drainage system, housing pattern, historians classified them into Neolithic stage, Paleolithic stage, and Mesolithic stage. Okay? Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. So when history is primarily looking into the growth of people, civilization, technology, they take into consideration the kind of technology people used at one point of time. So how these technologies are changing, how the customs are subjected to continuity, rituals are subjected to continuity. Understanding not? So therefore, what is history? How history originated? History originated because people created history. How people created history? Using a kind of technology, practicing specific form of rituals, going for specific form of marriage and family, they created a social, cultural, economic condition for themselves. And their condition, when read in future, when people in future read about them, that became history. Therefore, history is a conscious or unconscious making of the people. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं रहा है? History is a conscious or unconscious making of the people. So what they make today, that become the properties of history in future. Therefore, history is the making of the people. ठीक है? And when we are studying history, ठीक है? What is the source from which we study history? ठीक है? Here I'll be making a statement that history is a product of human curiosity. History is a product of human curiosity. ठीक है? As we have discussed earlier, from European society, people went to establish trade relationship with the people of America, Africa, Australia, and Asia. These travelers who visited long distance, covered long distance, when they saw other cultures, they wrote about them. Their culture, their family, their marriage, their trade, their food, they started writing about the account of others. इसको हमने बोलना शुरू कर दिया travelers account. When Vasco da Gama is coming to India, so he is writing in details about Indian governance, Indian food, Indian culture, Indian way of life. So this traveler's account became a treasure for history. Our curiosity to know about others is stimulating me to write about them. And from my curiosity, the writing comes. Through that, others come to know about history of India, हिस्ट्री ऑफ यूरोप, हिस्ट्री ऑफ अफ्रीका. तो 2 पॉइंट तुमको बताया. पहले क्या है? हिस्ट्री इज द मेकिंग ऑफ मैन. ह्यूमन बींग्स कैन ओनली मेक हिस्ट्री. एनिमल्स कैनॉट मेक हिस्ट्री. हाउ ह्यूमंस मेक हिस्ट्री? दे फाइट वार, practice rituals, construct buildings, develop law. And when they die, this may continue, this may change. Therefore, when we look into their town planning, when we look into their drainage system, when we look into their painting, we call this as Indus Valley civilization. Paleolithic stage. Understanding it not? So therefore, people make history. And when we get to know about it, we trace where from a given stage of history has developed. Understanding it not? So history of the people, when read in future, we are dating that history, putting that history in a date. ये हो गया Paleolithic civilization. This is Mesolithic civilization. This is Neolithic civilization. This is Stone Age. This is Bronze Age. This is Iron Age. The first point I told you, that history is the making of the people. They make history which may be subjected to continuity, or that history may die out. When we go for excavations, when we see their primary artifacts, so we realize when this history has started. What is unique nature of that historical period? Therefore, people make history, people understand that history, read that history, interpreting, बोलते जाओ, artifact, interpreting town planning, interpreting tools and technology, interpreting rituals. So their rituals, their burial grounds, their primarily decoration, house decoration, their tools, their technology give me a knowledge about the history of the people at that point of time. Therefore, people make history, and their history we read, getting some kind of authenticated evidence. And evidence कहाँ से आता है? Excavations, archaeology, architecture, artifacts, town planning. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Through that, we get to know about their history. समझ में आया? एंड सेकेंड पॉइंट तुमको बताया, हिस्ट्री इज द प्रोडक्ट ऑफ क्यूरियोसिटी. ठीक है, आई एम क्यूरियस टू नो अबाउट देम, राइट अबाउट देयर लाइफ, कल्चर, रिलीजन, mode of livelihood, everything. And there from the accounts of the travelers, we get to know about history. ठीक है, एक सेंटेंस बोलता हूं, ध्यान से सुनो. Where there is no historian, a sociologist becomes his own historian. Where there is no history or where there is no historian, a sociologist becomes his own historian. ठीक है, where there is no history, a sociologist becomes his own historian. Because without history, sociology is not possible. ठीक है, कैसे बताओ, ध्यान से सुनो. History always writes about great events and great people. Therefore, when you are reading world history, you read about Renaissance, religious reforms, you read about French Revolution. So history always primarily studies great events. Okay? Smaller events are not recorded by history. Okay? So means at a particular point of time, a person's suffering, a community's suffering, a community's way of life, history never pays attention to that. So history always narrates about great people, great exciting events, understand not, and greater cause of change. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं रहा है? तो इसीलिए हम हिस्ट्री को बोलते हैं, सैटिरिकली बोलते हैं, हिस्ट्री इज हीज स्टोरी, स्टोरी ऑफ द ग्रेट पीपल, स्टोरी ऑफ द ग्रेट अचीवर्स, स्टोरी ऑफ ग्रेट men and women. It never deals with the common people, commoners and small communities. ठीक है, आया समझ में? सेंटेंस को रिलेट कर रहा हूं. A sociologist, to his contrast, is going to study a small community, going to study a village. ठीक है, going to study, suppose poverty in case of Silampuri area of Delhi. हम ये पढ़ते हैं. Small people, specific location, their everyday life, sociology studies. I'm giving you an example. I stayed in a village for 2 years to do my research. And that village was located between Bengal and Odisha. When I went to that village to study, understanding or not, what I'm going to study? Income of the families, class structure, caste structure, education, village conflict, development. So when I'm going to study the village, first question I'll be asking the people about the origin of their village. When this village came into existence. And when I am primarily asking this question to the people, the name of the village was Longaleswar. Longal means plow, Iswar means God. So village is named after the god of plow, Plougs. And I asked this question to the elderly members of the village, where from your village got its name? Sumit Sarkar, famous historian of India, has not written about the history of this village. Bipin Chandra has not written about this village. Romila Thapar has not written about this village. Suhas Chakrabarti, historian, has not written about the village, or Ramchandra Guha has not written about that village. But I have to know about the history of that village. I am who? A sociologist. And village doesn't have any history. History of the village is not narrated by the historian. Therefore, a sociologist has to become his own historian. Because unless I know the history of the village, I cannot understand how village today is different from the village in past. Okay? So how I should be understanding the history of the village? I should be asking question to the people. Where from your village got its name? And see, the elderly members of the village, they told me that once there was a very big drought affecting to the life of the people in this area. Okay, people were affected by droughts. And they offered prayer in the glory of Lord Shiva. That there is drought, we are starving, we are dying like insects. Please save us. Lord Shiva, along with Parvati, descended in this village. Okay? And they started tilling the land from the middle of the night. And people were performing rituals here. Lord Shiva was tilling the land, sowing seeds, so that people will have something to eat. Okay? Look at this thing very carefully. So, you will be finding out that Shiva is doing it so that people can get food. And Shiva was so much engrossed with his work that he forgot that sun primarily started shining from the sky. Morning had started. Therefore, since Lord Shiva cannot primarily go back to heaven, Kailas, therefore he converted into a statue and slept on the lap of Parvati. And there is a temple in the village dedicated to Lord Langaleswar. And there you find out there is a statue made out of stone where Lord Shiva is sleeping on the lap of Parvati. How do you sociologically link up both the things? What people say and the symbol present in the village. We call this as myth. M-Y-T-H. Myth is a story. Therefore, people using myth, they reflect on their origin. So myth is not scientifically established. Myth is common sense. But holding this myth as correct, they trace the origin of the village. Understanding or not? So therefore, every day people go to the village temple, worship to Lord Langaleswar, and after him, the village is named as Nangaleswar village. And Malinowski brilliantly tells, myth may not be correct, but it has power to hold the people together. Look at the beauty of it. Nobody has seen, it cannot be scientifically established, that Krishna primarily hold Gandhamar, kya naam hai? That mountain on his finger. Okay? Govardhan on his finger. Nobody primarily knows about it. Nobody can scientifically establish it. But it's a matter of faith. And because of that faith, people are unified together. Janmashtami karte hain. So the myth may not be correct, but myth has power to glue people together. इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? Oral history. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So people explain their history through oral tradition. So the person who narrated this history to me, he must have heard about this history of the village from his father. His father must have got to know about it from his father. Therefore, every caste is having a history, every village is having a history, every area is having a history, every kinship group is having history. So as a sociologist, when I'm going to study caste, a kinship group, a village, I have to start with their history. So therefore, I am not saying history is correct or wrong. I am simply narrating that history is a form of belief that is holding people together. So their history is their history. correct or wrong, how does it matter to me? My concern is to see how people explain their origin. Similarly, when I go to a tribal society in Africa, newer belief that their ancestors fell from the sky and they hold the branch of the Nokombakam tree. Nokombakam tree ek hota hai, they hold the branch of the tree and subsequently descended down. Therefore, they consider this tree as sacred, perform rituals under the tree. So therefore, there is a cultural connectivity between tree and man. Look at the beauty of it. They look at some kind of sacred connectivity between the tree and man. Therefore, when all over the world people are chopping up the tree for the sake of making money, you go to their society, tree is being worshipped. That is a form of environmentalism. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So every group of people do have their cultural history. Therefore, unless you know their cultural history, you cannot do any sociology. Therefore, history talks about big men and big women. History ignores the history of common men, history of small people, history of tribal communities, history of the people living in the village, history of caste. So the history that they ignore, that they don't study, I study that history. So therefore, a sociologist is also an historian. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So without knowing the history of a caste, history of a culture, history of a community, I cannot understand their evolution and their contemporary position. इसलिए क्या बोलोगे? Sociology without history is incomplete. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा? इसलिए क्वेश्चन आया था, sociology without history is rootless. Unless we know the history of people, we cannot make comparison between past and present, and sociology is not possible. Therefore, sociology cannot grow. Sociological explanation is not possible without any reference to history. ठीक है? 3 पॉइंट बताया. क्या बताया? History is the making of man, and history is also studied by man. पहला पॉइंट. History, second point बताया, is a product of human curiosity. तीसरा पॉइंट बताया, where there is no history, a sociologist is becoming his own historian. ठीक है? समझ में आया? Yes or no? चौथा पॉइंट बता रहा हूं. History is specific and sociology is general. History is specific and sociology is general. That is not a difference. So what they study in a specific way, about that we develop a generalization. Therefore, without history, sociology is bound to be rootless. और एक बार बोलना. History is specific and sociology is general. That never does mean both are primarily standing poles apart from each other. Therefore, what they discuss in specific way, getting substance from that, we explain that in a generalized manner. Therefore, without history, sociology is not possible. कितना ब्रिलियंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग है देखो. सारे तुमको पढ़ाया, बस एंटीना ऊपर नहीं कर रहे हो. ठीक है? When I was discussing Renaissance, ठीक है, some students looking गूगल करके Renaissance में आर्ट चेंज हुआ. Who was the artist? Understanding not. डी वेंसी का नाम आके पहुंच गया. सर इसका नाम क्यों नहीं डिस्कशन किया? History studies everything in every possible detail. If a historian is narrating Renaissance, he will be starting with how Renaissance started from Italy. Who were the Italian painters? Who were the Italian primarily writers? Details about them, history is going to narrate. Then how from Italy it primarily spread to other countries of Europe. They will discuss that in detail. When they're discussing about religious reform, where was Martin Luther born? How he became primarily a priest? What were his preachings? Which are the places he primarily traveled? Everything in detail history is going to write. Therefore, history is explaining everything about a given event. Everything in detail history is going to write. Renaissance के ऊपर they'll be writing 500 pages. ठीक है? So history is primarily what? Specific analysis, one event that should be analyzed in every possible detail. हमने क्या किया? We gave a generalized explanation. ठीक है? Renaissance was a kind of awakening that liberated man's mind from out of superstitions, blind beliefs. Renaissance brings change in primarily what? Every sphere. Art, architecture, music, this and that. And humanism became the centrality to primarily every kind of cultural expression. Khatam. Similarly, while dealing with industrial revolution with you, I didn't discuss how industrial revolution had impact on Germany, how it had impact on France, how it had impact on Spain. कुछ नहीं बोला. Industrialization is giving rise to the introduction of machine technology. Mass production is taking place. Surplus is going to world market. Then I'm discussing about how industrialization having impact on family. Industrialization having impact on education. Generalized impact of industry on human life. Yes or no? Therefore, sociology goes for what? Generalization. And history goes for specific analysis in every possible detail. ठीक है? बताओ. How can I generalize if specific is not given to me? I can generalize about Renaissance, generalize about French Revolution, generalize about Industrial Revolution. If somebody writes 500 pages, I can convert that into 5 sentences. Once they give generalized account, I can summarize it. I can go for the themes of it, and I can be using that theme as the theme of sociology. Understanding or not? So who is giving me detailed information? History. Therefore, history provides raw materials on which sociological generalization develops. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So if there is a sociology, there is a sociology because history provided raw materials, intellectual input for the growth of sociology. Therefore, sociology without history is what? Rootless. I don't know. Yes or no? आगे बढ़ो. History develops typologies. History develops typologies. ठीक है? Which facilitates sociology to conduct research. ठीक है? History develops typologies that facilitate sociology to conduct research. ठीक है? कौन सा टाइपोलॉजी हिस्ट्री डेवलप करता है? बोलो. History develops which kind of typology? बोलो हिस्ट्री कौन सा टाइपोलॉजी डेवलप करता है? बोलो, अभी अभी ना तुम लोग नहीं पढ़े हो। तो हिस्ट्री इज डेवलपिंग टाइपोलॉजी, फ्यूडल, capitalism. Understand not? So economic history develops typologies about economy. ठीक है? So economic history is developing typologies about economy. This is feudal Europe. This is capitalist Europe. Therefore, feudalism, capitalism are historical concepts. And using these historical concepts like feudal and capitalism, we study how capitalism in India, feudalism in India is different from feudalism in Europe. समझ पाया? तो history develops types, and looking into these types we go for comparison. History बोलता है savage society, barbarian society, civilization. Then we are comparing one society with another society. तो history develops typology about material culture. क्या क्या है? Stone age, Bronze age, Copper age, Iron age. So typology about material culture, history talks about. Types of economy, history is talking about. Understand not? So getting inference from out of the typology that historians are developing, we go for comparison. Material culture means technology, tools, material culture. So we primarily go for comparison. आगे तुम पढ़ोगे. Marx is using significantly the historical typology to understand society. How medieval feudal Europe is different from capitalist society. Therefore, historians are developing typology and sociologists are using this typology to go for comparison. Or using these historical types, I can go for sociological analysis. कैसे देखो? History gives me the concept of feudalism. It tells feudalism was present in case of Europe from 14th century to 18th century. And history narrates what is feudalism. Land is controlled by the feudal lord. Feudal lord is employing primarily tax collectors. Feudal lord is giving land grant to serfs and peasants. Feudal lord is getting free labor from whom? These peasants and serfs. They give me detailed account of it. ठीक है? So using their typology, that feudalism is an economic type, I make a comparison between, be careful, I make a comparison between feudalism in India and feudalism in Europe. And एक स्टेटमेंट में लिख रहा हूं, Indian feudalism came from above, European feudalism came from below. ठीक है? Indian feudalism came from above, European feudalism came from below. Therefore, feudalisms are not feudalisms are not feudalism. They exist in different forms and their outcomes are different. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? War against feudalism is known as nationalist movement in India. But war against feudalism gave rise to capitalism in case of Europe. कुछ समझ में आ रहा है? अरे before British came, India was a country where land was belonging to village. Land was belonging to king. King used to give land to charitable organizations. Temple के लिए land grant king was giving. For the village land grant king used to give. And people were just primarily using the land to survive, sustain. So who was the landowner? King was the landowner. And village temple was a tenant. Villagers were tenants because land owner is primarily who? King. But king did not have right to evict people from out of their land. So long as you pay your tax to the king, so you become the controller of the land. King gives you irrigation facility. So whatever you are producing from land, it is yours. Part of it, you give it to king. And king will be giving you protection. King will be providing irrigation to you. ये हमारा सिस्टम था, agrarian system. ये सत्यानाश करने वाली साया इंट्रोड्यूस किया क्या? अरे बोलो, कुछ तो इंट्रोड्यूस किया कोई ब्रिटिश आके. परमानेंट सेटलमेंट. हमारा बीच में एक टपक पड़ा के जमींदार. And he became the owner of the land. We didn't have lords. So landlord is the making of British. Because they wanted to have regular income from land. Therefore, history of landlordism in India is different from history of landlordism in case of Europe. Europe में some powerful rulers, they acquired huge quantum of land. Declared themselves as landlords. पढ़ाया था तुमको dark age. I am a powerful person. I'll be controlling over 2,000 acres of land and primarily construct a castle there, live there. I'll say this is my land. Others will work for me. And these landlords will be organizing army. If you don't pay tax, they will be beating you mercilessly. And subsequently, these landlords will be declaring themselves as rulers. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? And Christian church is coming into prominence to buy peace among these warring landlords. That is how Catholic Church came into prominence. पढ़ाया था तुमको, Roman Catholic Church. So therefore, their landlords came from the ground. Our landlords came from the above. Therefore, European landlords came from below. Indian landlords came from above. Therefore, their landlordism is different from our landlordism. Therefore, their feudalism is different from our feudalism. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं रहा है? Therefore, history develops typology. Using this typology, sociologists go for comparison and generalization. Therefore, sociological analysis could not have been possible without the use of what? Typologies that historians are primarily developing. Therefore, without history, sociology is rootless. समझ में आया? Yes or no? Therefore, history regularly provides raw materials on the basis of which sociology develops generalization. Therefore, imagining sociology without history is absolutely an impossibility. ठीक है? तुम्हारा पेपर 2 सिलेबस देखो. चैप्टर नंबर 2 बताओ. What is written in chapter 2 of Indian sociology syllabus? बोलो, कुछ तो लिखा होगा. इसीलिए बकबक किया था 3 दिन. बोलो. Impact of colonial rule, protest and movement during colonial India, modernization of Indian tradition, social background of Indian nationalism. ये सर क्या है? है क्या चीज? अरे है क्या चीज है? Social background of Indian nationalism, protest and movement in colonial India, modernization of Indian society, social reforms. This is introducing history of India. ठीक है? Yes or no? So if you are introducing Indian society to somebody, first you are talking about history of India or not? Then you are talking about the fact. हमने तीर मार लिया. कौन सा तीर मारा? 5-year plan and social change. Law, education, constitution, social change. Community development program, social change. अरे सिलेबस में है कि नहीं है सारे? Green revolution, social change. Abolition of child labor, social change. Last part. So therefore, you need to study history to establish a comparison between what it was and what it is. Unless you compare between the both, you cannot understand growth, you cannot understand progress, you cannot understand change. Therefore, sociology is concerned about those is social continuity and social change. Subject matter of sociology. Sociology subject matter is social continuity and social change. Therefore, to understand this change, progress, we must have to go for comparison. Therefore, comparing past with present, we understand change. And for that comparison, raw material is supplied to us by whom? Historians. Therefore, without history, sociology is not possible. Yes or no? And when there was no sociology, historians were playing the role of the sociologist. जब सोशियोलॉजी नहीं था, historians were playing the role of sociologist. Therefore, I'll be saying historians were the sociologists of past. Okay? And the early sociologists were largely influenced by history. Okay? When there was no sociology, historians were playing the role of the sociologist. ठीक है? मतलब when there was no sociology, historians were playing the role of sociologist. क्या कर रहे थे लोग? क्या कर रहे थे? क्या कर रहे तुम लोग? Not only they are studying present society and writing about it. Through that present society, they are predicting future. जैसे बताया तुमको, this is primarily what? Savage society. This is barbarian society. आगे क्या होगा? Civilization. So historians like sociologists were talking about what is going to happen. So when there was no sociology, historians were talking about what? Society. Understanding or not? How people will be living happily, how social progress will be possible. These things were discussed by whom? Historians. Therefore, many historians, rightly Mansi was talking about, so many historians evolved as philosophers. Philosophy of history. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So therefore, many historians evolved into philosophers because they were studying the history of past, making prediction about future, establishing juxtaposition between history and philosophy, and that was a kind of sociology. ठीक है? Early sociologists were largely influenced by history. Early sociologist कौन है? देखो ऑगस्ट कॉम्ट क्या बोलते हैं? अरे ऑगस्ट कॉम्ट क्या बोलते हैं? बताओ तुम क्या कर रहे हो? Till 1300, it was theological society. 1300 to 1800, it is metaphysical society. 1800 onwards, it is scientific society. ये डेट को लेके सोसाइटी के बारे में बात करना, explaining society through dates and time, it's sociology or history? बोलो, explaining society through date and time from past, present, and future is history or not? Therefore, early sociologists were largely influenced by history. Similarly, Saint Simon is talking about conjectural, me-conjectural modern society. There also, he is primarily what? Coming closer to history. So therefore, एक sentence बता ध्यान से रखो. When there was no sociology, history was playing the role of sociology. When sociology arrived, old habits die hard. Therefore, sociologists were also primarily behaving like whom? Historians. Therefore, nexus between history and sociology is very strong, very endemic, and primarily is having a strong root. Nexus between history and sociology is very strong. It is endemic and it is quite old or ancient. So therefore, many times history and sociology are extremely close to each other. ठीक है, और एक चीज बताऊंगा. कैन यू डू सोशियोलॉजी विदाउट हिस्ट्री? तो हम हिस्ट्री का बात करते हैं, क्या बात करते हैं? When we speak about history, what we really talk about? Bro, you can have economic history, you can have cultural history, you can have political history. So history is multidimensional. ध्यान से सुनो थोड़ा सा. When I speak about cultural history, religion, customs, norms, conventions are primarily emphasized. When I speak about social history, caste, kinship, they come into prominence. Political history, kinds of rule. Economic history, mode of production, pattern of exchange, form of consumption, taxation system, price, market, all these factors come into prominence. ठीक है? Understanding or not? But tell me one thing. People's behavior, what people do. ठीक है? We make everything possible in a society through our behavior. Your role in the family defines the structure of family. Your role as market, as buyers, sellers, or as primarily who middlemen define the structure of market. Your role in politics as a voter, as a ruler, as a bureaucrat, that gives me the structure of polity. Therefore, political structure, economic structure, social structure, all are the products of human behavior. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? And our behavior is guided by history or independent to history. इसको एक बार sum up कर लो पूरा. When we are talking about the relationship between sociology and history, we find out that sociology and history, पूरा repeat कर रहा हूँ, revise कर दूँ इसको, summary बनाता हूँ, फिर आगे बढ़ेंगे. Sociology and history, they share a strong relationship, inbound relationship with each other since the date of the origin of the discipline called as sociology. No other discipline is having that kind of bondage as sociology is sharing with history. ठीक है? किससे bondage develop हुआ? Let me just put that in points. When sociology was not there, history was playing the role of the sociologist. And when sociology evolved, early sociologists were influenced by history. Number one. ठीक है? History develops typologies. Economic types, cultural types, social types. And sociology is using this typology to understand society and social progress. Therefore, history and sociology are strongly connected to what? Each other. History elaborates historical evidence, conditions. History elaborates different kinds of historical conditions like Renaissance, French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, and their elaboration is giving us substance. And through this substance, we develop generalization. Therefore, history provides raw materials on the basis of which sociological imagination, generalization develops. When there is no history, a sociologist is becoming his own historian to understand the truth. Therefore, without history, sociology cannot explain the reality. ठीक है? And most importantly, Most importantly, comparison will not be possible in sociology unless you use historical evidence. Sociology collects data about present. History gives narration about past. Comparing between the both, we understand social change. Therefore, without comparison, there is no existence of sociology. And for that comparison, substance is given to us by whom? Historians. Therefore, without history, sociology cannot make any sense. Therefore, history and sociology are strongly embedded to each other. और एक पॉइंट ध्यान से सुनो. Most of the sociological theories are coming out of historical accounts. Most of the sociological theories are coming out of historical accounts. What are these historical accounts? Bolo? Marxian theory of class and class conflict. Marx talks about feudal society, capitalist society. So entire Marxian theory is based upon historical evidence. इसीलिए मार्क्स का थ्योरी को बोलते हैं हिस्टोरिकल मैटेरियलिज्म. He is explaining history through materialistic perspective. Therefore, Karl Marx's theory of primarily society is based upon evidence collected through history. आजकल जो फेमिनिस्ट लिटरेचर पढ़ रहे हो, ठीक है? So feminist literature is also making comparison between women's position in past with women's position today. And feminists conclude that feudalism may be replaced by capitalism, autocracy may be replaced by democracy, but condition of women all over the world across the time is same. Monarchy may be replaced by democracy, political change हो गया. Feudalism may be replaced by capitalism, economic change हो गया. But condition of women will not change. एक सेंटेंस बोलता हूं जो तुम्हारा समझ में आएगा. From Sita to Nirvaya, I see no change in the position of women. Sita was kidnapped by Ravan, society was patriarchal. Nirvaya was raped because society is patriarchal. Therefore, from Sita to primarily Nirvaya, hardly I find out transformation in society. Technology has changed, politics has changed, constitution has come, but the position of women has not. Therefore, to make this kind of generalization today as a feminist, I need substance, I need evidence from history. Therefore, history gives me loads of materials to develop comparison, and on the basis of that generalization to develop a theory. Therefore, feminist theory I'm talking about today, Marxian theory I'm talking about today. Understanding or not? So all these theories are greatly coming out of historical evidence. So therefore, you will be finding out that sociological generalization is possible only through historical evidence. अरे वो नहीं बता रहा, तुम अपना आवाज कम करो. Understanding or not? So you find out that history and primarily sociology are very close to each other, and the bonding between both the discipline is very strong and ancient in character. ठीक है? एक चीज तुमको बता रहा हूं, ध्यान से सुनो. You know, if you look into the writings of C. Wright Mills, ये क्वेश्चन में आया था लास्ट ईयर, बी केयरफुल. C. Wright Mills considers that any sociological generalization should give importance on structure, history, and biography. ठीक है। अरे कॉम्ट ने बताया थियोलॉजिकल स्टेज, मेटाफिजिकल स्टेज, साइंटिफिक स्टेज। थियोलॉजिकल स्टेज डेट दिया till 13th century, theological stage will be present, theological society will be present. 13th century to 18th century, metaphysical society will be present. 18th century onwards, modern societies will be present. So who gives date to explain society history? Therefore, under the influence of history, early sociologists spoke about evolution of society. Okay? So C. Wright Mills indicates that to understand society, we have to give importance on three things. Okay? One is we have to study structure. Second, we have to study history. And third, we have to study biography. What is structure? Economic structure, political structure, religious structure. So structure comes out of what? पढ़ा था तुम कल परसों पढ़ाया था स्ट्रक्चर सिस्टम पढ़ाया था स्ट्रक्चर इज ए प्रोडक्ट ऑफ रोल रिलेशनशिप्स ठीक है family structure is a product of role relationship between parents children siblings so on and so forth therefore when sociologist is going to study something he must have to look into structure and structure is a product of what role relationship ठीक है Indian family religion state education everything is a product of role relationship ठीक है बता role relationship among the people in St. Stephen's College. It's a very old college. They have completed their centenary. So role relationship among the people in a very old, ancient, not educational institution. It's different from the role relationship among the students in a college which just evolved new. They have their own old libraries. They have their primarily what? They have their primarily what? Old monuments. You go to Oxford, you go to Cambridge. So they maintain their tradition in such a big way, and immediately people say it's unbecoming of the behavior of a student of Oxford. So therefore, your behavior is always greatly driven by what? History. So role relationships is defined by history. तुमको एक example देके बता रहा हूं. You know, when entire university goes on strike, teachers of Delhi School of Economics, they will be conducting the class. They don't believe in the culture of strike. So the Delhi School of Economics that has primarily produced great stalwarts. जितना सारे प्लानिंग कमीशन का तुम्हारा जो चेयरमैन बता रहा हूँ जितना सारे एडवाइजर्स हैं थे जितना सारे सुखमय चक्रवर्ती यू टॉक अबाउट केएल कृष्णा यू टॉक अबाउट सुरेश तेंदुलकर यू टॉक अबाउट ऑल आर फ्रॉम Delhi School of Economics. So they have created a culture. Over a cup of coffee, they will be discussing economic policy. So therefore, once you join that particular institution, your behavior should be befitting to the history and the culture of the place. Therefore, every individual interacts with other individuals in a given context, remembering the history of the context, culture of the context. So therefore, when you study interrelationship, history and culture you cannot ignore. Therefore, C. Wright Mills tells us that when you are pursuing sociology, studying interrelationship among the people, pay sufficient attention on what? History and culture. So Allahabad is having its own history, culture. Northeast is having its own history. If you go to Northeast, you'll be finding out people are always primarily, they're in a jovial mood. They crack joke with each other. So therefore, if you say, these people, they are not feeling, primarily having a heavy face at any point of time. So their primarily, culture, their behavior should be understood in their cultural context. Okay? So you should have to do sociology of structure by looking into what? History and culture of the people. And every individual account is a biography. Biography is not something you are writing. Great people write their biography, and common man is remembering his life history. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Common man remembers his primarily life history. Big people only print and publish their biography. Therefore, every individual is having a biography. So talk to the people. Explore their biography. Look into their life situations. Understanding not? During your time, what was the primarily people like? What was the place like? How the people are connecting to each other? So take the personal account of individuals. Therefore, biography is a treasure for sociology. History is a necessity for sociology, though sociology is studying structure. Therefore, without history, sociology is spineless, forget about rootless. You cannot rise, you cannot stand, you cannot speak without your spine. Therefore, spine to sociology is what? History. आया समझ में? तो बॉटम लाइन क्या हुआ? Despite our method is different, despite our database is different, despite our approach is different, समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? We share a strong connectivity with what? History. Therefore, without history, sociology could not have grown, sociology could not have developed, sociology could not have got its concepts, sociology could not have gone for comparison. Therefore, where we are today, for that, we are largely indebted to what? History. Therefore, borrowing ideas from history, we develop theories. Borrowing ideas from history, we went for typology. We became our own historian when history is not there. Early sociologists were influenced by history. So wherever you go, you find out sociology has borrowed something or the other from where? History. ठीक है? ये तो एक पार्ट हो गया. हमने बड़ा कैंडिडली, पोलाइटली अप्रिसिएटेड द कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ हिस्ट्री टू सोशियोलॉजी. अभी मैदान जंग में आते हैं. ठीक है? History today is coming so close to sociology. ठीक है? Therefore, in the history of today, you don't find out the presence of history. You find out much of the presence of sociology. ठीक है? History today is coming so close to sociology that in most of the historical analysis, you find out less of history, more of sociology. And classic example is Ramchandra Guha. किताब पढ़े हो रामचंद्र गुहा कोई? India after Gandhi? So if you look into Ramchandra Guha's analysis, it is not explanatory history like Bipin Chandra. It's not explanation of events, it's a generalization. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So it's a generalized view of India after India's family what? After Gandhi. Economics is discussing, politics is discussing, caste is discussing, movement is discussing. So it's more of a sociological approach today. Understanding or not? So therefore you find out that history is not going for that narrative explanation. 500 पेज में enlightenment लिखेंगे. नहीं. History is also going for analytical explanation. Generalized view. Borrowing that tradition from sociology. ठीक है? और एक चीज तुमको बताऊंगा. आज का डेट में एक नया हिस्ट्री डेवलप किया है जिसका नाम है सबल्टन हिस्ट्री. नाम सुने हो? सबल्टन हिस्ट्री. लुकिंग एट सोसाइटी फ्रॉम बिलो. पहले हिस्टोरियंस क्या बोल रहे थे? medieval history. How Akbar introduced different kinds of reforms. Indian history during Aurangzeb. Dalhousie का time में what is history? What he has primarily introduced. So history was the story of big men and women. Abhi now they are not looking into history from that perspective. They are looking at Indian history, or they are looking at history from the perspective of the poor, tribes, marginalized, women. बताओ मेरे को. Tell me, when you are explaining Ramayana or Mahabharata, whom you find out a big hero? If you are reading Mahabharata में राम कहाँ आ गए? कृष्ण इज हीरो, अर्जुन इज हीरो, भीष्म इज हीरो. ठीक है. बट लुक एट महाभारत फ्रॉम द स्टैंड पॉइंट ऑफ द्रौपदी. The entire Mahabharata will be looking so different. A woman is being forced to have sexual relationship with 5 men. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Her modesty was outraged in front of primarily all the elderly members of the kinship group. All through her life, she struggled for her right. So therefore, from the women's standpoint, Mahabharata looks to be so different. But the people, those who wrote Mahabharata, Maharishi Vyasa, he wrote this Mahabharata from the standpoint of whom? Arjun, Krishna, Pitama, Bhishma, and the great character. Therefore, if I am revisiting this Mahabharata from the standpoint of Kunti, from the standpoint of Draupadi, it will be looking so different. Understanding or not? So, be careful about it. Kunti is marrying to somebody who cannot impregnate her. Therefore, she is having relationship with different gods to beget a child. So this is the condition of women. Body of a woman is meant for reproduction. Your choice, your will is not important. This is history. Therefore, now historians are looking at history from the standpoint of peasants. Understanding or not? From the standpoint of peasants, we are looking into history. Standpoint of poor, we are looking at history. And the contour of history is looking so different. And that is known as subaltern history. So subaltern history is primarily borrowing from whom? Sociology. Because sociology always looks at society from the standpoint of common men and women. So our sociological tradition is offering foundation to historical analysis of people, culture, and society today. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Therefore, history is getting substance, is getting ideas from sociology to reorient itself. Okay? And one theory that is having a biggest impact on history today is feminism. Large number of feminist historians are coming into prominence. Understanding not? And they are looking into how women are marginalized in different stages of human history in different ways. How religion was promoting social exclusion of women. How family was restricting women's participation in production process. How women were debarred from having right or ownership over the land. How their productive role was converted into their reproductive activities, domestication of women. Therefore, feminist historians are primarily dismissing to the analysis of whom? Mainstream historians. They say mainstream historians were men. Most of them are paid by the royal gentries, or primarily whom? Upper class. Therefore, they were writing history in the glory of the rulers, writing history in the glory of the administration, than writing history reflecting on the plight of women. Therefore, in today's sociology, subaltern history, feminist history, Marxian history are immensely borrowing ideas from sociology to give a different kinds of orientation to sociology. Understanding or not? So therefore, what we have borrowed from them, in multiplication, we are primarily paying it back to them. As a result of which, history is coming closer to sociology. Otherwise, history was a narration of events, narration of people, narration of situations. So that narrative sociology, narrative history, elaborative history, explanatory history, getting support from sociology is now more systematized, is now more organized, is now more focused. Therefore, history today without sociology is fruitless. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So therefore, what they have given to us in past, we are paying it back to them by giving what? Our theories to them, approaches to them. And many of our approaches and many of our theories are happily used by sociologists. So therefore, the gap between history and sociology is sufficiently bridged today. इसलिए E.H. Care in his book What is History, बहुत बढ़िया बुक है, ठीक है. E.H. Care in his book What is History writes, more history is becoming sociological, more sociology is becoming historical. More history is becoming sociological. More history is coming close to sociology. More is becoming what? More history is coming close to sociology. Less is becoming the difference between sociology and history. Or more history is becoming sociological, more sociology is becoming historical, therefore gap between them is sufficiently becoming minimal. Therefore, in today's context, history and sociology cannot be considered as disciplines standing opposite to each other. More history is coming close to sociology, more history is becoming sociological, more sociology is becoming historical. We are borrowing inputs from them, developing generalization. They are using our theories and developing explanation about historical reality from sociological standpoint. Repeating it once again. More history is becoming sociological. Meaning क्या है? More history is coming close to sociology. More sociology is becoming historical. In sociology, you find out lots of history present. In history, you find out lots of sociology present. So therefore, components of sociology is more found in history, and component of history is more found out in sociology, then the gap between the both is becoming minimal. So therefore, in today's context, the difference between history and sociology is extremely minimal. Clear? Last point बताऊंगा तुमको. Though history is useful for sociology, and sociology is useful for history, but there is a danger. In the name of history, people are using conjectural history to develop generalization. Therefore, one should make a distinction between history and conjectural history. समझ में आ रहा है? History coming close to sociology and vice versa is good for both the disciplines, because this transaction is beneficial to both the disciplines. But there is a difference between history and conjectural history. Conjectural history is what? अरे बोलो क्या कर रहे हो तुम? Conjectural history. Conjectural history is based upon assumption, presumption, suppositions. ठीक है? History is good, but in the name of history, we are falling into the trap of conjecture. And conjectural history, understanding not, is not only useless but more than useless. What is conjectural history? बोलो. अरे कितना सारी चीज है. एक एग्जांपल दे दो. राम सेतु. मैं इसको हिस्ट्री नहीं बोलूंगा, conjectural history नहीं बोलूंगा. Since we find out a structure, some people come forward with the conclusion that this is primarily dam which was constructed by Lord Ram. So since Ram Setu is present there, it's a symbol of our cultural history. No ship will be coming through that route because that structure may be damaged. Therefore, all ships will be taking a long route to arrive at the port. Understanding or not? So therefore, this is which history? If authenticated, if it is substantiated by fact, I'll be saying this is history. But if assumption is justified by some what? Assumption, it's common assumption, justified by some of the research of some of the researchers. This is history or conjectural history. So therefore, history is good, but when conjectural history is primarily replacing to history, so that is misconstruction of history. And that is not primarily directing us to understand the truth, understand the reality. So therefore, it is being said that sociologists, while using historical materials, must have to make a distinction between what is history and what is conjectural history. Understanding or not? So therefore, once we are using history, we can make a better understanding of past and go for comparison. But in the name of history, if something constructed, something imagined, so that information is given. Our explanation, our sociological explanation will not be flawless, will not be authentic, will not be objective. Therefore, while using history, we must be very, very careful about authenticity of that historical account. समझ में? So therefore, history and sociology are sharing a strong relationship with each other. ठीक है? So तीन भाग में हमने डिस्कशन डेवलप किया. How is sociology borrowing inputs from where? History. How is history primarily taking inputs from where? Sociology. And what is the contemporary interface between history and sociology? And whilst using historical data, what kind of precautions sociology should take? Okay? On the basis of that, you can write answer to any question that comes on history and sociology. ठीक है? क्लियर हो गया? अभी नेक्स्ट टॉपिक पढ़ाएंगे, रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन फिलोसफी एंड सोशियोलॉजी. ये तुमको डिक्टेशन दे देते हैं. चलो, डिक्टेशन चाहिए? नहीं लिख लोगे? कुछ नहीं, आराम से सुनो. डिक्टेशन आराम से सुनो. स्लो पढ़ाता हूं, आराम से सुनो. रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन फिलोसफी एंड सोशियोलॉजी. तुमको बार बार मैं बोलता हूं, रिपीटिंग दैट टाइम एंड अगेन, सोशियोलॉजी ओरिजिनेटेड, ठीक है, largely borrowing ideas from philosophy. That's why I discussed in detail about origin of sociology. ठीक है, sociology originated as a discipline, borrowing ideas heavily from philosophy. ठीक है, एक्सप्लेन करो इसको. Sociology heavily borrowed ideas from philosophy for its growth and development. बोलो. बोलो 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 बोलो. एंटायर एनलाइटनमेंट जो पढ़ाया, यू कैन प्राइमरी राइट हियर. एक एक करके नाम बताता हूं. वेरी गुड. You don't have to study anything. Whatever you have studied, that you have to primarily produce it here. Forget about early philosophers. Come to the scholars of Enlightenment period. ठीक है, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau are thinking about a new society to come that would be primarily driven by what? बोलते जाओ. जॉन लॉक के लिए सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर, रूल्स ऑफ लॉ विल बी सुप्रीम. ठीक है, स्टेट शुड बी प्रोटेक्टिंग टू द राइट्स ऑफ द सिटीजन्स, प्रोटेक्ट देम अगेंस्ट इनजस्टिस. दिस इज द इमेजिनेशन ऑफ लॉक अबाउट जॉन लॉक about the future society to come. Therefore, during Enlightenment period, it was believed that the responsibility of the philosophers is to prepare a roadmap for future, which can guarantee human happiness. Therefore, natural science can give you physical happiness. But moral happiness, aesthetic happiness, social happiness, you can get if you live in a better society. Understanding or not? If we are living in a society where effective governance is present, our primary rights are protected, we can always get justice, we can be enjoying that freedom, so we will be getting aesthetic happiness, inherent internal happiness. Therefore, for the making of that kind of society, the philosophers will be preparing a roadmap. Philosophers will tell how that society can be built up. So therefore, scholars of Renaissance were applying their rational mind, creative mind, to think about that society. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So which kind of society we should develop that can primarily give justice, that can protect the property, life of the people, people will be enjoying freedom, they will do what they want to do, how that kind of society should be developed. And John Locke is primarily giving his philosophy. We should be going for a state driven by rules of law, separation of power, representative government. और इधर बताया था, the people not having wealth should not be given citizenship right. Because a man who doesn't have capacity to make money may misuse public money for his private gain. Corruption possible hai. Therefore, everybody should use his hard work to make money, to earn citizenship. As a citizen, you can contest in election. As a citizen, you can primarily be head of armed force. So to enjoy this kind of privilege, you must have to prove yourself. Understanding or not? So that was his vision of society. There should be supremacy of law, separation of power. People should be earning citizenship than getting citizenship by default. ये सारे बात की है. Similarly, if you look into the writings of Rousseau Rousseau also had a vision about modern society. क्या बोला Rousseau? General will should be present. General will is a juxtaposition between what? A real will and actual will. When you are working for society and society is protecting and safeguarding your interest. Understanding or not? So therefore, almost all the philosophers, they carried a vision about society. How new society should be structured, how this new society will be looking like. Voltaire spoke about what? Freedom of speech. He said religion should go. Montesquieu talked about spirit of law, then letters of law. So all the great minds of Europe, those who are known as the scholars of Renaissance, they prepared a philosophical outline, a roadmap for the making of future society that can guarantee human happiness. Therefore, that thought about making a society, the thought about happiness before sociology was articulated by whom? Philosophers. Therefore, mother of sociology undoubtedly is what? Philosophy. So what sociologists are doing today that philosophers were doing in past. Look at the difference. History gave you substance to develop sociological imagination. But sociology is born to philosophy. What philosophers were doing that sociology subsequently did. So therefore, sociology originated from where? Philosophy. Therefore, early sociologists were philosophers. Early sociologists were mostly philosophers. बोलो कौन कौन फिलोसोफर थे? पढ़े हो फर्स्ट चैप्टर में. इसलिए सेंट सिमन बोले अच्छे दिन आएंगे. कैसे आएंगे? अरे कुछ तो बोलो. सेंट सिमन ने बताया अच्छे दिन आएंगे. हाउ विल अच्छा दिन कम? क्या है? Industries should be controlled by cooperatives. First right over the product should be going to workers. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Industrial society should not be exploiting to whom? Workers. Industry should be controlled by whom? बताया था उस दिन. Industry should be controlled by, बोलो, industry should be controlled by whom? 4 क्लास बताया था. कौन? Architects, टेक्नोक्रेट्स, वर्कर्स, इन्वेस्टर्स. चारों मिलके दे विल बी प्राइमरली क्या करेंगे? कंट्रोलिंग द इंडस्ट्री एंड प्रॉफिट दे ऑल विल बी शेयरिंग अमंग देमसेल्व्स. यस और नो? सो देयरफॉर ही वाज टेलिंग हाउ इंडस्ट्रियल सोसाइटी शुड बी रिफॉर्म्ड. दिस इज ए फिलोसॉफिकल आउटलाइन और नॉट? सिमिलरली ऑगस्ट कॉम्ट बोलता है in scientific and positivistic society. In scientific and positivistic society, scientist and engineer will never be committing any mistake. They will plan, they will execute their plan, better society will come, happiness will be promoted. He is also thinking like a philosopher or not? Yes or no? Similarly, पढ़ाया था तुमको. Karl Marx tells, capitalism is all bad. It is exploitative. People should go for revolution, and what will come? Socialism will come. Therefore, Marx is also developing his own philosophy. And Durkheim also developing philosophy. Which philosophy पढ़ाया था? Sympathetic reaction to modernity. If some problems are there, nothing to worry. Go for reforms. These problems will be taken care of. A better modern society will come. Therefore, those who discuss about what will come in future, they are philosophers more or sociologists more? Those who think about future, predicting future, thinking about future, they are more philosophers or not? Therefore, early sociologists like Durkheim, early sociologists like Marx, Auguste Comte and Saint-Simon, They were philosophers more or sociologists more? Bolo. They were philosophers more. So therefore, early sociologists were philosophers. 2 point बताया. Philosophers spoke about the future of society, trespassing into the domain of sociology. When sociology was not there, philosophers were primarily playing the role of whom? Sociologist. इसमें किस किस का नाम लिखोगे? हॉब्स का नाम लिखोगे, रूसो का नाम लिखोगे, वोल्टेयर का नाम लिखोगे. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So these people were thinking about future. When sociology came, early sociologists were philosophers. Therefore, philosophy and sociology were strongly connected to each other. Okay. Number 3. There is a strong ethics. Be careful. There is a strong connectivity between moral philosophy and sociology. Therefore, sociology and philosophy cannot be just separated from each other. There is a strong connectivity between moral philosophy and sociology. What is moral philosophy? What is moral philosophy? Bolo. Moral philosophy is ethics. Very good. Moral philosophy is ethics. What is the role of ethics? बोलो. अरे एक पूरा पेपर है तुम्हारा. बोलते जाओ बोलते जाओ बोलते जाओ. हाँ, moral philosophy or ethics offers guide to institutions. ठीक है, समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Moral philosophy guides to institutions. Educational ethics, administrative ethics, business ethics, they will be guiding to institutions. Therefore, ethics offer guidelines to institutions. ठीक है. Ethics also guide our behavior, everyday behavior. ठीक है. What sociology studies? Subject matter of sociology is what? Subject matter of study sociology is what? People's behavior and institutions in society. So how industry is working, how school and colleges are working, how individuals are interacting with each other, how they play their roles, यही तो study करते हैं. We study institutions, we study human behavior. And both institution and human behavior are driven by what? Ethics. Therefore, without studying ethics, can we pursue sociology? No. Therefore, there is a strong connectivity between moral ethics and sociology. बताओ कुछ अभी मेरे को बता दो. Your moral ethics may be different from my moral ethics. But should I evaluate your behavior on the basis of the standard of my moral ethics, or I should primarily evaluate your behavior on the basis of your moral ethics? I should be studying your behavior on the basis of your moral standard or my moral standard? Your moral standard. Therefore, my ethics, I should be keeping it away. I should put my ethics in my refrigerator. And driven by your moral ethics, how you are regulating your everyday behavior, that I should study. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? अरे कुछ समझ में आ रहा है कि ऊपर ऊपर जा रहा है? हाँ? आ रहा है समझ में? एग्जाम्पल एक ले लो. In American society, people go for serial monogamy. Serial monogamy पता है? At one point of time, one person is marrying to another person. One woman is married to another woman. उल्टा हो गया. One man is marrying to another woman at one point of time. One husband, one wife. But in last 12 years, 15 years, a man has married primarily 10 wives, and each woman has primarily got 10, 15 husbands. Okay? So meaning what? Marriage, divorce, remarriage is a continuous process in their society. Therefore, in serial number, a person has many wives, a woman is having many husbands. So that is normal. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Yes or no? That is normal to their society. So what is normal to one society may not be normal to another society because ethics are different. Therefore, if an Indian sociologist go to America and finds out that this type of marriage is taking place in Britain and America, what kind of society they are? You are applying your moral standard to evaluate their behavior, and that is death of sociology. So you should understand people's behavior from their moral, their ethical, their cultural perspective. इसको हम बोलते हैं वैल्यू न्यूट्रलिटी. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? Therefore, sociology studies people's behavior in relation to their ethics, in relation to their culture. Ethics and culture is a product of their philosophy. Therefore, their philosophy is a guide to their life. Respecting to their philosophy, I understand their institution, I understand their behavior. Therefore, sociology and moral ethics cannot be separated from each other. आया समझ में? So your moral ethics is a guide to your behavior. इसलिए एग्जाम्पल दिया था. A old man is taking bath early in the morning. बताया था, एग्जाम्पल दिया था कि नहीं दिया था? A man who is primarily, हाँ अलाहाबाद का दिया था. 85 years old man early in the morning taking bath. So I should be studying his behavior from his ethical perspective. Understanding not? So moral ethics is a guide to people's behavior. So how people manifest their behavior on the basis of their moral guidelines, that I have to interpret, that I have to study. Therefore, sociology and moral ethics cannot be separated from each other. Therefore, philosophy and sociology are close to each other. आया समझ में? 3 पॉइंट हुआ. क्या क्या हुआ? When sociology was not there, philosophers were predicting the future of society and they were assuming the role of sociologist. इसलिए बोलोगे sociology may be coming in 19th century, but sociological imagination is as old as human civilization itself. And who was developing that imagination? Philosophers developing that imagination. Historians were developing that imagination. Therefore, sociological imagination developed much before the rise of sociology. Point number 1. Point number 2 क्या बताया? Early sociologists were philosophers. Whether Saint-Simon you talk about, Weber you talk, Auguste Comte you talk about, Durkheim you talk about, Karl Marx you talk about, they all were predicting future society to come. Therefore, there are less sociologists, more philosophers, because sociology goes by facts and philosophy goes by prediction for future. Therefore, they were philosophers. तीसरा पॉइंट तुमको बताया. क्या बताया? Moral philosophy is the heart and soul of people's life. Moral philosophy guides institutions. Moral philosophy regulates people's behavior. So they are, बोलते जाओ, their duties, their marriage, their property inheritance, everything is defined by their moral philosophy. Therefore, respecting to their moral philosophy, I develop sociological explanation about people and culture. So therefore, without understanding their philosophy, what guides to their life, I cannot study people. So therefore, philosophy is very close to sociology. Because without philosophy, I cannot conduct any sociological research. क्या बोल रहे तुम? चलो बोलता हाउ फिलोसफी सोशियोलॉजी डिफरेंट. ये बताया था when sociology was not there, philosophers were assuming the role of whom? Sociologist. सेकेंड पॉइंट में ये बताया सोशियोलॉजी आ गया, बट सोशियोलॉजिस्ट नहीं बने, सोशियोलॉजिस्ट बिकेम प्राइमरली पार्ट फिलोसोफर्स, ये बताया। तीसरा पॉइंट बताया पीपुल्स फिलोसफी इज मोर इंपोर्टेंट टू मी, विदाउट व्हिच आई कैनॉट स्टडी देयर कल्चर। लाइक एग्जाम्पल एक दे दो, without studying Hindu philosophy, without understanding caste ideology, I cannot make sense of people's behavior in India. So therefore, their philosophy first I have to study, then I can understand their behavior, what they're doing. 3. Number 4, like you have a philosophy of science, similarly we have a philosophy of sociology. ठीक है, समझ में आया? Like you have a philosophy of science, similarly you have a philosophy of sociology. What is philosophy of science? बोलो, what is philosophy of science? Philosophy of science should be going for empirical investigation. Philosophy of science should be exploring truth without any biasness. Philosophy of science को रॉबर्ट मॉर्टन बोलता है, क्या है? क्यूडोस। क्यूडोस मतलब क्या है? Scientific knowledge is meant for scientific community, it is not personal knowledge. Scientific knowledge is meant for universal applicability, universal use. Philosophy of science. Scientists should not be primarily what? Interested in materialistic pleasure, disinterestedness. And every scientific truth is subjected to scrutiny, review, and doubt. So, philosophy of science. Following this ideology of science, we should conduct scientific research. Scientific research should not be biased. Philosophy of science. Similarly, what is philosophy of sociology? The philosophy of sociology offers a guideline about how sociological research should be conducted. How sociological analysis should not be primarily biased. How sociology should be giving explanation about the truth which cannot be explored through naked eyes. So the truth that is present, invisible, that we must have to explore. Therefore, methodology I should pursue. The way I should be respecting to other cultures. The way I am primarily explaining the hidden truth. So this is philosophy of science. Therefore, philosophy of science is a guide to research. Philosophy of science is a guide to primarily what? Sociological imagination. And philosophy of sociology primarily defines what is the end goal of sociology. Therefore, sociology is having its own philosophy. Economics is having its own philosophy. And science is having its own philosophy. Therefore, we cannot detach philosophy from sociology, because without philosophy, we will be directionless, we will be guideless. Therefore, philosophy and sociology are connected to each other. ठीक है, और एक पॉइंट का बात करेंगे. Sociology is always associated with the problem of valuation. Sociology is always committed to the problem of valuation. ये वैल्यूएशन क्या है? हर्म्यूनेटिक्स के बारे में जानते हो? हर्म्यूनेटिक्स नहीं. हर्म्यूनेटिक्स मीन्स इंटरप्रिटेशन. ये वर्ड मार्क्स वेबर ने यूज किया है. वैल्यूएशन प्रॉब्लम देखो. A Bengali married woman. ठीक है? After taking her bath, is putting sindoor on her forehead. This is what? This is what? अरे बोलो क्या कर रहे हो? This is an act. She is standing in front of mirror and putting primarily sindoor. You are a sociologist standing there. क्या लिखोगे? A woman whose height is 5 inches 4 inches putting on a sari is putting sindoor. Full stop. ये लिखोगे? क्या लिखोगे? क्या लिखोगे? It is a cultural prescription for a married woman in Bengal to put sindoor. Therefore, you are evaluating to her culture. What she does, she is doing it because culture asks her to do it. ठीक है? So every human behavior is a product of what? Culture. Therefore, evaluating their culture, you make sense of their behavior. ठीक है? I am again asking you to evaluate her culture to understand her behavior. क्या लिखोगे? I am again asking you, be careful. Again asking you to evaluate her culture to explain her behavior. क्या लिखोगे? I'm again, सुनो मैं जो बता रहा हूं. I'm again asking you to evaluate her behavior, understand not? To evaluate, to reevaluate her behavior, looking into her culture or evaluating her culture. Reevaluate her behavior, evaluating her culture. I'm asking you to do it once again. क्या लिखोगे? सत्यानाश. क्या लिखोगे? When a woman is proudly displaying her primarily marital symbol, that is not prescribed for a man. So therefore, in a patriarchal society, marital status of a woman should be exhibited, but that should not be primarily prescribed for man. So therefore, once you display your marital symbols, you tell the world, I am somebody's personal property. I am married. But that is not applicable to man. Therefore, how in a patriarchal society, a woman must have to primarily change what? Their appearance when they're married. So therefore, you talk about two things. Patriarchal ideology is present in Bengali culture. Therefore, a Bengal woman is primarily told to dress up in a particular way. Understanding it not? So you are reevaluating her culture. पहले तो बताया because of her culture she is putting sindoor. Then again reevaluating their culture. Culture के अंदर में और कुछ छुपा है क्या? Is there something hidden in their culture? Answer comes yes. What is hidden? The stinking smell of patriarchy is present. Therefore, in patriarchal society, men are distinguished from women. Women are subjected to primarily enslavement, and this is one form of enslavement. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So this is a kind of philosophical, ideological explanation to the behavior of the people, which is being primarily prescribed by their culture. So culture prescribes behavior of the people, and to understand this culturally prescriptive behavior, sociology is using ideology. Using feminist philosophy, using feminist ideology, you understand culturally prescriptive behavior of a person. आया समझ में? So therefore, sociological research is not possible without philosophy, without the use of ideology. आया समझ में? So therefore, philosophy and sociology cannot be separated from each other. एक सेंटेंस बोलता हूं, तुम मेरे को हेल्प करो. ठीक है? सेंटेंस में 3 पार्ट है. एक एक पार्ट में बताऊंगा, तुम नाम बताओगे. ऑब्जेक्टिव अंडरस्टैंडिंग और ऑब्जेक्टिव एक्सप्लेनेशन ऑफ ट्रूथ. एक्सप्लेन फैक्ट्स एज दे आर प्रेजेंट। डिसिप्लिन का नाम क्या है आउट ऑफ सोशल साइंस? एक्सप्लेन फैक्ट्स एज दे आर। डिसिप्लिन का नाम क्या है? हिस्ट्री। हिस्ट्री एक्सप्लेन्स फैक्ट्स एज फैक्ट्स। 1526 बाबर केम टू इंडिया, फॉट वार अगेंस्ट इब्राहिम लोदी। इब्राहिम लोदी का कलर ऐसा था, हाइट ऐसा था, 2000 कैटल्स वेंट, 1000 horses were there, then they were killed, everything in meticulous detail. And a historian will be collecting this data from different source and said मैंने तीर मार लिया। तो स्टडी ऑफ फैक्ट्स एज फैक्ट्स इज व्हाट? हिस्ट्री। ठीक है। सब्जेक्टिव इमेजिनेशन, कंप्लीट सब्जेक्टिव इमेजिनेशन, फिलोसॉफी। अच्छे दिन आएंगे, ये होगा, वो होगा, राम राज्य आएगा, फिलोसॉफी। Where does sociology stand? Where does sociology stand? मैंने क्या देखा? सिंदूर देखा। सिंदूर नहीं लिखा। I saw Sindur Bengal woman is putting. But I wrote what? Patriarchal ideology is influencing to the everyday behavior of a Bengali woman. So I see objective reality, but develop subjective perception about it. Therefore, sociology goes for subjective understanding of objective reality. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? I see something objective, but developing primarily what? Subjective understanding about it. Therefore, in every sociological statement, in every sociological conclusion, there is present idealization, subjectivity, theoretical explanation. Though we study facts, but our explanations are what? Our explanations are what? Subjective, driven by concepts. कल पढ़ा था, driven by concepts, driven by ideas, driven by theories. Theories, concepts, ideas are all subjective. And through them, I understand objective reality. So therefore, philosophy is having primarily presence in every sphere of sociological analysis. Therefore, philosophy, idealization, and sociology cannot be disconnected from each other. And last but not the least, sociology developed theories. All kinds of theories we develop in sociology, they are simply what? Are all kinds of theory. Critical theory, feminist theory, structural analysis, Marxian theory, neo-Marxist theory, जितना सारे theory है. So theory is what? A body of ideas. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है? So therefore, body of ideas develop theories. So theories are also kind of philosophy. So without which a framework for research will not be developed in sociology. ठीक है? So therefore, sociology and philosophy cannot be what disconnected from each other. ठीक है? रिपीट कर लो इसको सारे, पहले से बताओ. When sociology was not there, philosophers were assuming the role of what? Sociologist. Therefore, before the origin of sociology, sociological imagination was developed by the philosophers. क्या क्या नाम लिखोगे? हाँ, जॉन लॉक लिखोगे, रूसो लिखोगे, वोल्टेयर लिखोगे, मॉन्टेस्क्यू लिखोगे, एडम स्मिथ लिखोगे, ये सारे फिलोसोफर्स थे. So all these philosophers develop ideas before the arrival of sociology. ठीक है? तो इसको जो और थोड़ा सा तुम लिखोगे, बड़ा ढंग से प्रेजेंट करने के लिए देखोगे, सोशियोलॉजी प्राइमरली वाज बोर्न फ्रॉम द वूम्स ऑफ फिलोसॉफी, और फिलोसॉफी इज द मदर ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी. ठीक है? सेकेंड, सिंस फिलोसॉफी वाज द मदर ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी, व्हेन सोशियोलॉजी डेवलप्ड, अर्ली सोशियोलॉजिस्ट बिकेम हु? फिलोसोफर्स. इसमें फिर नाम लिखोगे. सेंट सिमन, हाउ कमिंग क्लोज टू फिलोसॉफी. August Comte, how coming close to philosophy. Marx, how coming close to philosophy. Durkheim, how coming close to philosophy. ठीक है? देन तीसरा नंबर सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज लिखोगे, मोरल फिलोसफी इज ए गाइड टू इंस्टीट्यूशंस, गाइड टू इंडिविजुअल बिहेवियर. तो वी मस्ट हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द मोरल फिलोसफी ऑफ द पीपल, कीपिंग आवर मोरल फिलोसफी अवे टू अंडरस्टैंड देयर बिहेवियर. ठीक है, यस और नो. देन लिखोगे, सोशियोलॉजी इज कंसर्न अबाउट द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ वैल्यूएशन. क्या वैल्यूएशन करोगे? हाउ पीपल्स वैल्यू इज प्राइमरली गाइडिंग देयर बिहेवियरल पैटर्न. बंगाली वुमेन का बात किया मैंने. सो देयर वैल्यू इन्फ्लुएंस टू देयर बिहेवियर एंड वी प्राइमरली डेवलप आवर आइडियाज टू इवैल्यूएट देयर बिहेवियर. सो देयरफॉर दो लेवल पे फिलोसफी आता है. हर बिहेवियर इज ड्रिवन बाय हर कल्चरल एथिक्स and I am interpreting it using my primarily sociological ideology, sociological philosophy. Therefore, in every stage of sociological research, ideology and philosophy play a significant role. Okay? Then I discussed with you. Sociology is concerned with subjective understanding of objective reality. History is concerned about objective explanation of facts. Philosophy is dealing with purely subjectivity. Therefore, sociology is having some space, some primarily what? Some space sociology has created for what? Imagination, ideas, understand not subjectivity. Therefore, subjectivity being present in sociology, so sociology and philosophy cannot be separated from each other. Then last को बताया, sociology develops theories and sociological theories are also philosophies, without which sociological research is not possible. So therefore, philosophy and sociology are strongly interconnected to each other. ठीक है? Saying so, you will be एक last sentence बताओगे. Philosophy goes for complete abstraction, but sociology is grounded on what? Facts. On the basis of the facts, we develop our sociological generalization. Therefore, sociological generalization is abstract, but not primarily escaping facts. So on the basis of facts, we develop abstraction. But philosophy develops abstraction without any fact. Dualism, some monoism, कोई fact नहीं होता है. They develop complete abstraction. Therefore, though there is some linkage, sociology is different from what? Philosophy. So philosophical generalization, philosophy क्या बोलेगा? कल की अवतार होगा. But sociology will not be speaking about कल की अवतार होगा. Sociology will be talking about crisis of globalization. Therefore, our generalization is based upon facts. Their generalization is based upon ideas. Therefore, though ideas are present in sociology, sociological generalization are not based upon complete ideas, ignoring to facts. So therefore, sociology balance between facts and ideas. Philosophy ignores fact to develop ideas. So therefore, philosophy and sociology, despite sharing strong link, they can be standing what? Opposite to each other. ठीक है? ये हो गया philosophy, sociology. आज दो कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ लिया तुमने. One is history and sociology, and second is philosophy and sociology. चलो, कल तुमको पढ़ाएंगे पॉलिटिकल साइंस एंड सोशियोलॉजी, साइकोलॉजी एंड सोशियोलॉजी. ठीक है? कल टाइम दूंगा, क्वेश्चन जो सर लिख रहे हो कल पूछ लेना सर. आंसर राइटिंग दूंगा, ये टॉपिक 2-3 दिन में खत्म हो जाएगा. देन आई विल बी गिविंग यू क्वेश्चंस एंड यू स्टार्ट राइटिंग आंसर्स. ठीक है? चलो.